Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I formally declare open this council meeting of the Colac Otway Shire Council on the 28th of July 2021. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of the Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders, past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. I would like to advise that all council meetings are audio recorded and live streamed, with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be placed on the website as soon as practicable. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with directions issued by the Chief Health Officer of Victoria that were in place at the time of the publication of this agenda, this meeting is being held by video conference. Can I ask that staff record all those present today? I note that all councillors are present. As this is Peter Brown's last council meeting, I'd like to say a few words. On behalf of my fellow councillors and staff of Colac Otway Shire Council, we'd like to thank Peter for all the work he's done for our region since starting in the role of Chief Executive Officer in July 2018. Peter has shown great leadership, particularly as Colac has dealt with the challenges of COVID and is always approachable. Peter has made very strong connections with our community. He's been a great backstop for our council over the past 3 years. Peter has established strong relationships across all levels of government, providing inroads for Colac Otway when it comes to advocating for important projects for our region. As Peter finishes up this week, we are sorry to see him go, but we wish Peter and his wife Wendy and family the best of luck in the next chapter of their life, and we wish him very well. Thank you, Peter. Okay, now moving on to question time. Colac Otway Shire encourages community input, and integral to this is the opportunity provided to ask questions at council meetings. A maximum of 30 minutes is allowed for question time. Community members wishing to ask questions of council by video conference were requested to register their intention to do so before 5 p.m. on Monday the 26th of July 2021. No requests were received. I have received questions in writing from Ms Dora Deeming, Mr James Judd, Ms Meredith Kefford, Mr Nasikob and Mr Prabhakati. Each question received will be read out and a response will be provided. Responses will also be provided in writing to submitters following the meeting. Okay, we've got questions from Moira Deeming, Taylors Hill. Question 1. Under Victorian law, is it legal for local government councils to provide sex-based targeted services and facilities separately to gender identity-based targeted services and facilities? If not, why not? For example, can we legally put signs on a set of public toilets declaring that one is for biological males, including males with an intersex condition, one is for biological females, including biological females with an intersex condition, and one is for people with transgender identities of any biological sex? If not, why not? Can we get a response from General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure?
Thank you, and through the Mayor, Council is not aware of any law which prevents gender-specific signage. The design of future public facilities will benefit, however, from the current thinking regarding equity and gender neutrality.
A question from Mr James Judd, Colac. Instead of the Colac Otway Shire Council using money and much officers' time to look at what it wants in the future, that it often cannot afford unless large amounts of money are received first from other bodies, but put at least equal time and money into fixing what it has and making sure they are kept in proper condition to give the service that are supposed to be provided at all times, not keep neglecting spending money to upgrade infrastructure, that is drains, footpaths and safe sight lines on all roads, or advocate to the responsible authority to keep sight lines clear at all times, since many roads are managed parts by various authorities. Response from Mr McGann, General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure.
Thank you, and through the Mayor, Council does not neglect to undertake repairs, maintenance and renewal works on all of its assets. Indeed, a large proportion of the annual budget is allocated to these tasks, with only a small percentage allocated to new or upgraded assets. Council is bound by its legislative obligations under the Road Management Act to ensure the road environment is safe in accordance with prescribed intervention levels and response times outlined in the Colac Otway Shire Road Management Plan 2021. Council's compliance with the Road Management Plan sits at over 90%. Officers regularly advocate to Regional Roads Victoria for road safety and condition improvements, and we collect data on road use and undertake road safety audits throughout the year to support our efforts.
Thank you. Question 2. Does the Colac Otway Shire Council have public liability insurance to cover the public when using the coin and the slot barbecues installed by the Council at locations in this Shire, should they malfunction and cause injury to persons or damage to property? If so, what is the cover and what is covered? Response from General Manager, Corporate Services, Mr Lawrence.
Thank you for the question. Yes, Council has public liability insurance cover of $600 million. This covers personal injury, damage to property and products liability caused by an occurrence in connection with Colac Otway Shire. This covers any possibility of claims of negligence against the Council.
Thank you. Question 3. Will the Colac Otway Shire Council please advise the community on recycling of plastic items, since a South West Council has come out and advised people that not all markings that look like a recycling symbol actually indicate this, but some are only a resin code that also advise that the organisations who can assist in knowing what is recyclable, when some of these bodies are also in this municipality. Response from General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure, Mr McGann.
Thank you, and through the Mayor, yes we will. We intend to increase our efforts to educate our community on all aspects of waste management, and the classification of recycling material will be part of this work.
Thank you. Question 4. With all the talk about reducing greenhouse gases being added to the atmosphere by the Colac Otway Shire Council, how long before the use of coin in the slot barbecues in public parks that the Council put in are prohibited, or restrictions placed on what is allowed to be cooked using the barbecues, as all cooking gives off some fumes? Response from General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, Council has no plans to control the type of food that is cooked on the barbecues.
Thank you. Prior to the Council announcing a proposal for more buildings on some blocks to ease the housing crisis, what consideration for an urgent infrastructure upgrade did officers take into account? The drainage system needs a very urgent upgrade, as many of the drains are unable to handle runoff after a short, heavy rainstorm. All extra buildings in an area will increase the speed of runoff. Thus, very much extra water supply will be needed to cater for the increased demand. Also, a much larger sewerage system will be needed to cater for the increased demand on the system. The roads will be far more dangerous for far more vehicles will be required to park on roadsides. The time taken for garbage collections will be increased because of more bins being put out for collection, and access to bins could be blocked by vehicles parked on roadsides. There would be far more pressure on council to provide many more parks so people could exercise or do other activities out of doors, as limited space would be provided near place of abode. Response from General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, the demand for infrastructure and service upgrades will inevitably increase as Colac's population continues to grow. Council periodically undertakes reviews of the need for these upgrades and plans for them to occur as required. This often requires advocacy for supporting state and federal grants. Council will be undertaking strategic planning in the 21-22 year for the rezoning of growth areas identified in Colac 2050 to examine what infrastructure upgrades, both physical and community infrastructure, are required due to demand arising from these rezoned areas. Council will also be placing requirements on developers to make payments for developer contributions that assist in funding these upgrades. Now, developers are required to install drainage infrastructure within the subdivisions to control the flow of stormwater in flood conditions, and then Colac Stormwater Development Plan, or I should say the Colac Stormwater Development Plan, gives guidance on the location and the type of major stormwater infrastructure which will be required across Colac's growth areas. Things such as stormwater retention and treatment systems. In addition, Council will be undertaking a full system condition audit in 22-23, so that's the condition of the drains, which will guide annual expenditure for repairs, maintenance and upgrades. In respect of sewerage, Barwon Water has a responsibility to upgrade its sewerage network and treatment facilities to respond to growth as it occurs.
Thank you. Now a question from Meredith Kefford, Clifton Hill. I want to know why Colac Otway Shire is not part of VECO, the Victorian Energy Collaboration, veco.org.au. It's the largest emissions reduction project ever undertaken by the local government sector in Australia. By using renewable energy, it will be saving 260,000 tonnes of carbon emissions from entering the atmosphere. What is Colac Otway's plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and act on climate change? Response from General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure.
Thanks. And through the Mayor, Colac Otway Shire was one of the first regional councils to be deemed carbon neutral in its own operations. Now, Council currently obtains green energy and purchases carbon emissions offsets, and this enables Council to be carbon neutral. The Victorian Energy Collaboration is a great initiative and offers councils a renewable energy contract. However, these contracts are long-term contracts, up to 10 years, and that may preclude councils from buying locally produced renewable energy in the future. Colac Otway Shire implemented a range of measures to reduce its carbon footprint, as well as generate its own power from solar panels. Council will continue to explore opportunities to further reduce its carbon emission as well. And over the next several months, we will be working on our 2022 environment strategy, and we encourage you to provide feedback to that during the public consultation phase.
Thank you. Now a question from NASA Cobb Forrest. The Council has undertaken a leadership role when it formally opposed the use of seismic testing to look for oil and gas in the Otway Basin. The Council has a great opportunity to continue with its leadership for the protection of the environment through facilitating the institution of a new environmentally as well as economically beneficial to mitigate carbon emissions and thus climate change through policy and voluntary markets by creating interest in a rapidly growing aquatic farming sector of seaweed. Seaweed farms release carbon that may be buried in sediments or exported to the deep sea, therefore acting as a CO2 sink. The crop can also be used in total or in part for biofuel production with a potential CO2 mitigation capacity in terms of avoided emissions from fossil fuels. Seaweed aquaculture can also help reduce the emissions from agriculture by improving soil quality, substituting synthetic fertiliser, and when included in cattle feed, lowering methane emissions from cattle. Seaweed aquaculture contributes to climate change adaptation by damping wave energy and protecting shorelines, and by elevating pH and supplying oxygen to the waters, thereby locally reducing the effects of ocean acidification and deoxygenation. Seaweed offsetting is not the sole solution to climate change, but it provides an invaluable tool for a more sustainable future. Would the Council explore the potential and possibilities of seaweed cultivation farming in the Shire's coastal area? Response from General Manager, Environment and Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, Council is pleased to learn a little about the benefits of seaweed farming and would certainly be interested in supporting the concept with suitable organisations who are in the business of turning these ideas into reality.
Thank you. Now a question from Prabhakati Colac. Whilst commending the work put in by members of the community panel for the 2050 community vision, I do have one question regarding the process in Council's brief given to the panel. Given its importance towards the successful realisation of the 2050 community vision, why is it that neither the community survey nor Council's remit to the community panel include a request to consider the suitability and effectiveness of Council's current governance structure and rules? Response from General Manager, Development and Community Services.
Through you, Mayor, thanks for the question. As with any deliberative process, the amount of time we had to spend with our deliberative panel was finite. Council chose to ask the panel to focus on the areas it saw as the biggest challenges facing the organisation and our community going forward, being at a high level, considering our limited resources and capacity to service growing community demand. In particular, Council asked the panel to focus on three particular issues of the environment, housing, and our assets and services. These three areas are deep and complex and took up all the time the panel had allocated.
Question 2. Whilst complimenting Council on the improved ratings in the 2020 Customer Satisfaction Survey, I would like to ask whether Council does undertake an analysis of the reasons for areas of poor ratings and develop strategies to improve it, and if so, whether the changes from last year can be attributed to the change in strategies implemented from the previous year. As examples, I refer to the consistent low ratings across the years from residents at Apollo Bay, as well as ratings for planning and building. Response from the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a matter for consideration later in the Council meeting, and so my comments are not meant to impinge on that consideration of Council. So in my time here, we've reviewed the survey report and produced an action plan to address areas of most significant concern. An improvement in several services, including waste management, sealed and unsealed roads over the past 12 months, can be attributed to a stronger focus on education around waste management practices within the community, stronger advocacy of sealed roads, for which Regional Roads Victoria are responsible for, and they take up most of the roads that people complain about, and improved processes for undertaking works that are needed on unsealed roads. The focus from the 2021 Community Satisfaction Survey results will continue to be continue working with the Apollo Bay community and surrounds community and continuing to implement improvements with planning and building services. It's important to note that these improvements can take some time, and work that we started 3 years ago is probably now only now being felt by the community, particularly in the area of roads and services at Apollo Bay. And they're not immediately reflected in the following year's survey results.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes question time. Now we move on to petitions and joint letters, of which we received nil. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? I note there are no declarations of interest. Okay, I propose that we move to confirm the minutes from the council meeting held on the 24th of June 2021. Do I have a mover? Councillor McCracken. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Costin. Is it to be opposed? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item's carried 7-0. I will now move on to item 10.1 of the agenda, Draft Community Vision 2050 and Draft Council Plan 2021-2025, incorporating the Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan. That's up on the screen. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in relation to the community consultation, I know there's been a lot of broad consultation and consultation with health and so forth. I'm just wondering whether groups such as CLEG and Colac Chamber of Commerce were spoken to in relation to these plans.
I'm happy to answer that through you, Mayor. It's Tamsin McLennan. So yes, the answer is yes. Both of those groups were represented along with many others. Both the large industry representatives, otherwise known as CLEG locally, and the Chamber, Colac and Apollo Bay, just for the record, were both part of key stakeholder interviews that we had to start to explore the issues and opportunities involved in the development of the council plan. So yes, they are, and they'll also be involved in the next phase, which is seeking community comment on the plans.
Thank you.
Councillor White, you had a question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to confirm the timeframes and ensure that we've got enough time to consider the community feedback before the final plan comes before council for approval.
Happy to answer that through you, Mayor. Yes, we do have. If council chooses to place the draft plans on exhibition today, they'll go on exhibition officially tomorrow for 6 weeks. The closing date for exhibition will be the 10th of September. That will give officers time to analyse the feedback that we've received and come back to councillors with our responses to those feedback prior to putting the final plans to the council meeting at the end of October.
Thank you.
And do councillors also have an opportunity to make any changes where they feel they'd like to?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, absolutely. We've already booked a workshop for August and a workshop for September and early October, so there'll be ample opportunity for councillors to continue to finesse as they see fit.
Are there any other questions from councillors? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor McCracken? Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor White. Is it to be opposed? Okay, Councillor McCracken as the mover.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I was very pleased to give the community an opportunity to comment on this particular plan, set of plans, I should say. And I hope that the community do take the opportunity to do this, because it's important that they have a chance to comment on the various matters that are included. And it should be noted that it's both the council plan and the municipal health and wellbeing plan. And that's a much broader sort of reach from the community than what we've had in the process that got us to here, which I've been critical of in the past because it has had an excessive cost. But I think generally speaking, look, if the community have a chance to have their say, that's good, and I encourage them to do so. So if anyone's listening out there, get onto the website, colacotwayshire.com.au, get on, have a look, make your comments and make it well known, because it's an important thing that helps guide council's processes into the future.
Councillor White as the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to congratulate the team for getting us as far as we've got. It's a really complex and sometimes convoluted process, and it really has been a great team effort to get us to where we've got. In line with Joe, I want to encourage the community to take the opportunity to really give us some more feedback. I mean, we've got a huge amount of stakeholders that have been involved so far, and this is the opportunity for others to get involved as well. So we're never going to get it 100% to meet everybody's needs, and it's never going to be perfect, but I think we've got a really good base document from which to work. And again, I really encourage the community to get involved and give us some more feedback.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Can you see them? Oh, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to support the calls that the other councillors have made for the public to make comment on the plan, to have a look at the draft plan. I do encourage that. It'll be out for exhibition for at least 6 weeks. I do think, on looking in the plan, there could be some areas that could be fine-tuned, but I'm sure that can be done during the process of the consultation process and the lead up to it being brought back to council in a couple of months' time.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? No one. Okay, councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Yeah. Please raise your hand, or, yep. Yep, okay. The item's carried 7-0. I do apologise, councillors. There is a bit of a lag with the video, so that's why if you've probably moved and you're wondering why I haven't seen you, or there just seems to be a couple of seconds lag. Okay, now we move to item 10.2, the draft Colac West Development Plan. Now, up on the screen. Do councillors have any questions of officers? I will note that we do have a revised officer recommendation that's now up on the screen. Can council officers just point out what that change is?
Yes, through the Mayor, it's Simon Clark here. I'm quite happy to point out that change. On the plan, we have a court bowl that runs into the site from Rifle Butts Road. There was some discussion around whether that should actually be a road that can link through in the future, and not to rule out the idea of a connecting road or pathway. It can't go to the west, but it can go to the north. So we've indicated a dash notation to be included on the plan showing a potential road or pathway connecting from the end of the Court Bowl northwards to the proposed Mill Street extension, to be further investigated when we get more detailed planning or subdivision applications down the track.
Thank you. Do any other councillors have any questions? No, I'm not seeing any hand go up. If I'm missing your hand, maybe, no, I don't think there's any questions. Okay. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Potter. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCracken. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Potter is the mover.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm pretty excited to see this in front of us, and pleased to have the opportunity to move this recommendation. This has been a long time coming, this development plan, and quite clearly we need housing in Colac of all types, and a lot of opportunities potentially can pass us by. COVID, one of the side effects of COVID has amplified the interest in people coming to Colac, but we have to provide them with the opportunity to come to Colac, and a development of such as this will certainly provide that opportunity. I'd like to thank the proponents, in particular Henry Bongers and Jill and Justin Madden, for their collaboration and their patience and working together to put this plan in front of us. There are a few challenges. The existing housing in Rifle Butts Road provides a couple of issues, so the plan may not be as segmented or regimented as perhaps you might want, but that's because we've allowed development in that area prior to this type of development plan being produced, and sometimes this is what planners warn us about. I'm also mindful of the Rifle Club in the vicinity. That's an outstanding institution in Colac that's produced shooters on the world stage in days gone by, and I worry about whether they have a future and whether that's the location for them. But in general terms, it's great to see this in front of us. I do have a query over the proposed Ball Street connectivity between Wilson and through to Donaldson, but that can be fleshed out, and I'm interested in talking to our planners in relation to that. But I'd like to thank them for their work. They've often mentioned this proposal over time. It takes a lot to put this together. It looks really good, and I hope it comes to fruition. You know, and I'm just envisaging a walking path connected from Ross's Point all the way across to Rifle Butts Road. How good that would be if that's achievable as well. But more importantly, another opportunity for us to provide housing to the people that want to come here.
Councillor McCracken as the seconder. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Costa.
Thanks, Mayor. Just looking at line 2, I'm not sure how to address this, but should we be informing adjoining residents and ratepayers, including the word "and ratepayers"?
Mr. Clark or Doug McNeil, would you like to make comment on that?
Through the Mayor, I'm quite happy to answer that. It's Simon Clark here again. I have no issue with the addition of those words.
Councillor Costin, do you wish to continue? Oh, Councillor Potter?
Yeah, Mayor, as a mover, I'm happy to see that inclusion. I hope that doesn't mean, though, that we have to write to every ratepayer and inform them. Our website and a bit in the Colac Herald and Mix FM or whatever should suffice for the general ratepayer, but we do need to write to all the adjoining landholders.
Adjoining. Yeah. I can't see his right. Oh, yes, Mr. Clark.
Through the Mayor, just to clarify that is the adjoining residents and adjoining ratepayers, not ratepayers throughout the whole of the Shire?
Yes, yep, yes, yeah. Thank you. And as the seconder, are you happy with that change?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, perhaps Simon, does that have any material difference as to whether that's the wording, or does it stay the same? Do what you have to do, does that change at all?
Through the Mayor again, it doesn't really make any difference. Sometimes residents are not the same as landowners. We've proposed a letter drop there as well, so we're trying to cover off on all bases.
No, I'm comfortable with it. Then there's no material change.
Okay, thank you. Well, okay, so we've got the mover is Councillor Potter, the seconder is Councillor Kraken, who chose not to speak. Yep. Councillor Costin, do you wish to speak on the item?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Okay, does any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Okay, the item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.3, call for submissions committee meeting, Bruce Street residential project submissions. Do councillors, okay, we'll just get that up on the, do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. There seems to be a couple of different processes going on with this Bruce Street land, asking for expressions of interest to buy it or develop it, and this submissions process. I wonder if we can just get some clarity as to what this committee relates to, which aspect of it, and how it fits in with the process of possibly selling or developing the land.
Through
the Mayor, it's Jeff Reddy.
Sorry, Ben. Through you, Mayor, I'm happy to take that one, and Ben may jump in as well. So this process is around selling the land. So as per the Local Government Act, Council needs to advertise its intention to sell and call for submissions. So this resolution is about hearing submissions to that process.
Okay, are there any further questions? No further questions from councillors? Yeah, I'll just ask a question about, so we're advertising our intention to sell, and we're asking for submissions at the same time that the land has also been advertised, which probably a number of us have seen in the local papers. Can we just have clarification on the fact that those two processes are running in parallel, and how that actually works?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to answer that question. And it's very clear that we can run both processes at the same time. And we did that very deliberately to ensure that we could achieve a housing outcome for Colac as soon as possible. This is in the spirit of both the 1989 Local Government Act and the 2020 Local Government Act. We have certainly sought legal opinion to ensure that that is the case. And Council has made no decisions and will not make any decisions in relation to the sale of the land. What it's forecast is what it intends to do, and any decisions following the expression of interest process will also be after it's considered all submissions and made a determination in that matter.
Thank you. If there's no further questions from councillors, councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Potter, do I have a seconder? Councillor White, is it to be opposed? Okay, Councillor Potter is the mover.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, Council made it clear that we need to open up land for residential development, and the community have made that clear to us as well, and they want that done as a matter of urgency. And a series of council resolutions has got us to the point where we are now, where we are advertising a parcel of land that we own for sale. We are required to advertise our intent to sell that land, and this is what this part of the process is about. And I thank Peter Brown for his input in relation to explaining that process, that we can run them both hand in glove or at the same time, and this will save us time, and we need to save time in response to the urgent need for housing in this shire. The councillors have asked for a 15% of social housing to be included within this development. That may seem high, but it's nothing to be afraid of. There's an urgent need for that type of housing in this area. 344 additional houses needed, I think, off the top of my head. So I'm looking forward to seeing what submissions we get. I encourage everyone to think carefully and have your say if you want to have your say. I thank the officers for their work to get us to this point, and I hope one way or another this project can proceed as a matter of urgency as it is. Thank you.
Councillor White is the seconder.
Just very quickly to echo Councillor Potter's comments and to say that I think it's a really exciting opportunity for our community and to encourage those that are interested to get involved, and that really hopeful that our vision for something new and innovative, including social housing, this is the starting point. It's a really exciting opportunity, and I'm so proud of Council for really taking up the what our community's been telling us for a long time, and to really making the move and moving on this. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? No? Okay. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.4, Blue Water 2021-2022 Childcare Fees Review. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Is that Councillor White? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Okay, Councillor White is the mover.
I'll just very briefly to say that it's really satisfying that the feedback from the community has been heard and the fees have been reviewed and there's been adjustments made, and we really want to encourage our community to use our facilities, and childcare is exceptionally important to young families, and I think that we've been able to review and update the fees is great, so I'm just fully support it.
Councillor Potter is the seconder.
No, I won't speak. Thank you, Mayor.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Okay, now we move to item 10.5, the 2021 Community Satisfaction Survey. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Costin.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to flag an alternative motion. Thank you.
Do any other councillors have any questions of officers? No. Councillor Costin, you flagged an alternative motion, which is up on the screen.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a good news story. And I just
sorry, you're the mover of that motion. Is it to be seconded? Councillor White, is it to be opposed? Councillor McCracken. Okay, Councillor Costin is the mover.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to expand on the fairly bland recommendation that officers have put up. This is a good news story. The results show a very significant 8-point improvement on the 2020 result. It's at the highest score we've had for 10 years, and beats the previous high in 2019 by quite a margin. The performance is significantly higher than the average rating for other large rural council groups, and most of our demographic and geographic cohorts have improved their perceptions of our overall performance, which is a great result. And I think we should thank our outgoing CEO, Mr. Peter Brown, for his work in achieving this result, and also his staff. They've put in a considerable effort to improve things, and if you look at the results over previous years, you'll see that the results during Peter's term have been significantly higher than in previous terms. So well done, Peter and his team. But we also need to acknowledge that there are some areas where there's still room for improvement, and particularly in some locations, Apollo Bay and the surrounding areas, and in the areas in the service areas of building planning and unsealed roads. There's also room for improvement. And to that end, I think we should request a briefing in October on what staff are doing and what they propose to do to address those areas of low scores, in the hope that we might do even better next year. Thank you.
Councillor White is the seconder.
Reserve.
Councillor McCracken, you opposed.
Thanks, and I did so with some reluctance, really, because it is a good set of numbers. I do think generally these sort of things might be slightly exaggerated due to the post-election sort of bump that usually happens over the course of a 4-year cycle. I guess why I oppose is because I'm sort of against the idea of, how can I say, sort of putting these sort of things into motion. I mean, a lot of these sort of things are sort of standard operational matters which would already happen anyway. And I know that officers are, continually looking at how to improve their performance. And I know that as councillors, we've constantly been on officers talking about planning in particular, but also Apollo Bay areas as well. And I think, to be fair to the whole of Shire approach that we all take, singling out particular geographic areas like Apollo Bay, although it is a standout, there are also other areas that might be ignored if we go with this particular motion. So that's why I do have a bit of hesitation supporting it. It would be my hope that we could sort of go with the original motion, because I don't think we really need a motion to thank our CEO. I mean, we can do that in person. And I think officers have quite rightly acknowledged in briefings and in public that there are certain areas that need to be improved. And we already have council briefings about this particular survey anyway. So a lot of the stuff that has been requested does sort of already happen. So it's sort of like putting in a motion what is already operationally happening anyway, which, look, that's okay, that's nice, but I just think it's a bit unnecessary. As much as the figures do present some positives, I just think it's not really producing, this particular motion doesn't really produce anything extra value. So I appreciate the really good intent behind it, and I can see what tries to happen. But I guess my next question is, what happens when there's a bad set of figures? In this particular motion, we say that we thank the CEO. Do we condemn a CEO and staff if the figures are bad? And I really worry that if we do put staff in that particular position, we're creating a bit of a precedent here. So I just think it's something to be very careful of. So I'd prefer to go with the original motion, and if I do get the chance, I'll be moving that. Thank you.
Okay, does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, whilst I understand the intent of this motion, I'm of the same mind as Councillor McCracken. In fact, I find the motion a little bit contradictory. On one hand, we're congratulating the CEO on a good job, and then the next paragraph says, but you haven't done a good job down around Apollo Bay. You'll have to fix that. And some of these, echoing what the CEO said earlier, actually, some of these strategies implemented by the organisation do take 2, 3, 4 years to come online. And I know the great work that has been done in the unsealed roads area. Definitely more work to do, and I noticed in the survey that Colac Road and Wild Dog Road get a mention in the Apollo Bay area, and I definitely support extra work being done there, and I think that is. But there's also some roads in Colac that need some urgent work, Cants Road, Airy Street, and there was a notice of motion on the books about sealing Forest Street South, and I note that there's no money for that in the budget. So there's work across the Shire that needs to be done, but overall things are heading in a great direction, including roads, and planning is improving. Need to see some big steps, but it is improving. And I'd like to thank not just the Chief Executive, but our staff on the ground, and our community satisfaction with their points of contact and service have certainly gone up. And these are the people who respond to the potholes, the people behind the counters at Ray Street and the VIC. They have the contact with the people, and they're clearly doing a good job. And I'd just like to congratulate all our staff on the ground for the work that they're doing.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I have some reservations about this resolution that's been moved. While it is true that the figures are better this year, and significantly so than previous years, it's 1 year's result. And if you look back on the statistics for the last decade or more, there's typically an improvement immediately after an election. So you're entitled to wonder whether there's going to be the second year dip that follows the improvement after an election. And then what does that send from this resolution that we're going to start hauling the new CEO over the coals because of that that dip? The other area I have concerns about, we keep talking about Apollo Bay, and there are legitimate concerns of Apollo Bay residents, but that particular area is Apollo Bay and surrounds, and I know it says in the resolution Apollo Bay and surrounds, but we seem to lose sight of the Cressies, the Beacs, the beech forests, the Jellybrands, the forest. Whenever we talk about these reports, it's always the focus on the coast, and while that's important, the particular score relates to Apollo Bay and surrounds, and I get concerned that Cressies, Beacs and Birregurra Forest and others get overlooked in that discussion. There is a bit of a contradiction in this particular resolution. On the one hand, we're thanking everyone for the great job, although I take it from 3-2, but not planning. I mean, we've already got strategies that recognise that there's some things we need to do in planning, and some of that is strategic work to remove some red tape. And then point 4, another councillor briefing report. Where does this sit with all the different priorities that we've set in council plans and strategies and what have you, that we now have this different priority that talks about in point 3. And I think the reality is some of that stuff's picked up already. So I acknowledge that the satisfaction survey this year is better than last year, and significantly so, as it is after most council elections. I just have real reservations about picking one year and patting ourselves on the back and congratulating ourselves. I don't think that's fair to the community.
Okay, thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillor White, you reserved.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to say I think it's a fantastic result, and that we should put on the public record that we thank the CEO and the team for the work they've done to achieve that result. It's the best result in 10 years, so I think it's good to put it on public record. I also think in the spirit of transparency and accountability that to ask for those areas to be looked at is with good intention. I don't think we need to overanalyse this alternative motion. I think it's fairly straightforward. It comes straight out of the report, is that acknowledging that some of the scores weren't as good in some areas. I don't think it precludes us from doing work in other areas. I agree, often the other little places around the municipality do get missed, and we need to keep reminding ourselves of that, and we do keep reminding ourselves of that, and we do talk about that quite a lot. I think we also need to recognise that we have discussed that the community do give feedback about roads that often aren't our responsibility, and I think there's a lot of work that will be ongoing around educating the community as to what's our responsibility and what's not, and how we can advocate for them. So I just think in the spirit of accountability and transparency, I thought the recommendation was a bit light on, and to just not overanalyse what we're trying to get to with this, but to put it on the public record, and in the spirit of transparency and accountability, I think it's reasonable to request a report in October just to see how we are going to address some of those areas. I think, if the next result isn't as good, I don't think we're going to go out and publicly condemn and trash our council. I think we're all above that sort of behaviour, and I don't think that's how we would respond if there wasn't such a good result next time. So I don't think that really would be an issue. So I just would like to second the alternative motion, because I think it puts a bit more out there for the community and the public around transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Councillor Costin, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't propose to debate the fine detail of this recommendation. It is a good news story. I do believe we do need to celebrate our successes. Council is the one who's accountable for overall performance. We sit in the driver's seat. We need to be open and transparent. We need to recognise the very low scores in some areas, and we do need to be seen to be making sure that those low scoring areas are addressed. Thank you.
Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Councillor, and all those against? Okay, the item is defeated 2-5.
Could I have a division? Thank you.
Division is called. All those in favour? Councillor Costin, Councillor White, all those against? Councillor McCracken, Councillor Bell, Councillor Potter, Councillor Hart, Councillor Hanson.
I just say, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the original motion when you're ready.
Okay, we have, go back to the original motion. Councillor McCracken, you'll move the recommendation. Is it to be seconded? Councillor Hart, is it to be opposed? Okay, Councillor McCracken is the mover.
Yeah, look, as I said, I'm happy to move this. I think one of the good things about this is it does provide accountability, because the satisfaction survey is in a publicly accessible agenda. And I think we take away some of the commentary and perhaps what some might call spin from the commentary, and let people see it for what it is. And they can make up their own mind about this. So I don't think not having it here is perfectly accessible to the community. They can see it for what it is, and they can see it in context, and the media can also see it as well and report on it as they see appropriate. So I too believe in being open and accountable and accessible, and this is certainly a way that we can do that, but the community can see it for what it is and not putting any of the extra commentary on it.
Councillor Hart as the seconder.
Thanks, Mayor. I support this resolution. I think that we can draw useful information from this, as we have in the past, particularly around the town planning issues. And yes, there has been some significant improvement in the overall rating this year, and that is great to see. And I appreciate the work that staff are doing in relation to the different areas that need improvement. But I think this feeds into a whole range of material that council has, and is appropriate to, rather than singling it out as one particular document that should be acted upon, keeping in mind that it is a survey of several hundred residents and ratepayers, and we also have input where people make direct comment on different plans and what have you. So it's an important part of that process, but we have to recognise that it's just part of the process.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Okay, now we move to item 10.6, the Colac Otway Shire Resource Recovery and Waste Management Strategy. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. We received by email a 2-page summary of the strategy. Does that form part of the consultation documents?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Cameron Duthie, can you hear me okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks for the question. The two-page summary is exactly that. It is just a summary of the objectives and the strategies contained in the document. In regards to the consultation, no, it doesn't actually cover the consultation. It's actually just a key document for items contained in the strategy.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from councillors? Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Costin, do I have a seconder? Councillor Potter, is it to be opposed? Okay, Councillor Costin is the mover.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd firstly like to thank the staff involved in the preparation of this strategy. It's quite a complex area, and it's an area which I know very well, and the strategy is quite a good strategy. It's heading in the right direction. I don't need to say much more than that. Thank you.
Councillor Potter is the seconder.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just endorse the words Councillor Costin said. It's a good strategy. It's all-encompassing, and I thank staff and councillors for their work on it.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Okay. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.7, contract 2129, curbside bin procurement, the glass bin. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart. My goodness, that was a lag, believe it or not, from.
Sorry, not me.
Okay. Are there any? Do any councillors have any questions? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor. I don't know who was Councillor Costin. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? No. Councillor Costin is the mover. Councillor Costin, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. This is a key element of our waste strategy. The purpose is to divert recyclables from our landfill stream, and that is will in turn reduce the amount we pay in landfill levies, as well as recycling glass for reuse. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Councillor Hart is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just think it's interesting to note with this particular bin purchase, which is to increase the recycling of glass and to make it easier to recycle glass, that the bins themselves, I understand, have about 50% of recycled material in terms of the plastic for the bins. So I really think it's great to see that to a large extent it's closing the loop on recycling plastic in creating the bins to recycle the glass. Just like to draw attention to that.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, we have, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.8, the rates assistance to community groups policy.
Should get changed, I think.
I'll note that we have a revised officer recommendation. So okay. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No questions of officers. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Potter, do I have a seconder? Councillor Costin. Is it to be opposed? No. Councillor Potter is the mover.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a good policy that can assist some of our struggling community groups. I encourage everyone to have a look at it and have their say about it, and look forward to considering any submissions down the track.
Councillor Costin is the seconder.
Reserve, thank you.
It wasn't opposed, I don't think.
Oh, okay. Yes, I think it's a good policy. The revised recommendation does allow a bit of flexibility, which is great. It supports community organisations to provide services that otherwise council might have to provide, or services might not be provided at all. So we should support our community groups that go out of their way to provide these services for the communities.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.9, the asset accounting policy. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor McCracken, do I have a seconder? Councillor Bell, is it to be opposed? Councillor McCracken is the mover. Councillor Bell is the seconder.
No further comment.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? The item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.10, the 2021 revaluation, adoption of valuations. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. Could we just get some clarity, please, if we go through this process and approve these valuations? If someone receives their rates notice, which then I think we get those in about late August, and has concerns about the valuation, what's the process then? And does this have any bearing on their right to object or to raise any concerns they may have?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. For the specifics, with that, answering that, I'll ask Paul Carmichael to, because he'll be able to give the actual specific times.
Thank you, Errol. This is simply a report to adopt the valuations that have been certified by the Valuer General as being true and correct. These valuations will be used for our rate notices that go out next month. And once people get that notice, they'll have a 2-month period in which they can object to the valuation. So it has no impact on their ability to lodge any objection.
Are there any other questions for officers? Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Potter, do I have a seconder?
Go on, Jamie, stick your head up, you can do it. Hang on. Second.
We need a seconder.
I can put my other hand up, Mayor, if you want.
No one wants to second the valuation.
Is anybody seconding this item? Councillor White. Okay, is it to be opposed? No. Okay, Councillor Potter is the mover.
Thanks, Mayor. I won't speak to this. I thought Councillor Hart's question was very relevant and got the information out. That's all I have to say.
Councillor White?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Okay, councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Oh, there's Grandson. Okay, the item's carried 7-0. Okay, now we move to item 10.11, update section 5, instrument of delegation, council to CEO. We dealt with a similar item last month, and can we get an explanation or clarification of why we're dealing with this item again?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This and the next item on the agenda are directly related. As a result of the EPA Act 2017 being brought into legislation on the 1st of July, we had legal advice very late in June that the CEO's instrument of delegation to implement the delegated authorities under the next item, the CEO's instrument of delegation should be stamped, dated and signed with a date post the 1st of July. So this CEO's instrument of delegation is effectively exactly the same as the item that was adopted last month. It'll just be dated and signed after the 1st of July. It's an administrative process, that's all.
Thank you. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart, then Councillor Costin.
Thanks, Mayor. Last month, I think it was, when we passed a similar resolution, and I thank Mr. Lawrence for the answer he's given so far. I think there was calling for a report on how the delegation may change or could change in relation to legal action, and how legal action is brought, and whether that's scrutinised by councillors. So I wonder if we adopt this resolution today, will that report that was called for in June, in a couple of months' time, will that still be occurring?
Through the Mayor, absolutely, Councillor. We've already commenced work on that, and it will. I think it's due to come in September. So yes, the work is currently being done, and it will come up in due course.
Councillor Costin, you had a question?
Not anymore, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors? Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hart, the seconder. Councillor Potter, is it to be opposed? No, Councillor Hart is the mover.
Thanks, Mayor. Delegating authority to the CEO is a very important process. Otherwise, you'd have the unworkable situation when councillors are expected to go out and do everything. So it's an important process that we do that. I accept the explanation we've received from Mr. Lawrence that due to one particular act, we have to have this done after 1st of July. But I would just flag that I think we just need to reconsider this and at least ask the question when the new CEO starts, and it may be that there's no need for a change, but we should at least run the ruler over this issue in discussions with the new CEO as a matter of course. I'm not flagging that I have any concerns. I'm not flagging that I am aware of any, but it's always worth doing that when you have a new CEO that ultimately will be receiving these delegations in the next couple of weeks.
Councillor Potter is the seconder.
Nothing to add, Mayor.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Okay, the item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.12, section 18, instrument of sub-delegation under the Environment Protection Act 2017. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Potter, do I have a seconder? Councillor Bell, is it to be opposed? Okay, Councillor Potter is the mover.
I won't speak to it, thanks, Mayor. It's operational and we need this to be go through so work can be done.
Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Kate. No, nothing further to add.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Councillor Bell, I just can't see your screen. Okay, yep. Right, the item is carried 7-0. Now we move to item 10.13, report of informal meetings of councillors. Please note that this item is to report the informal meetings of councillors and does not require a council decision. Thank you, councillors. That concludes this council meeting of the Colac Otway Shire. I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks for your
Thanks,
patience.
Mayor. Thanks, everyone.
Mayor, well done.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Mayor.
Good work, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.